Hello, everybody. This is Eric Apricot, and today I have a special guest, Marc Campbell, who is an NBA analyst, an NBA shooting coach for 6 years, an ex-pro player in Europe, and 2009 NCAA champion. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. What an intro.
Marc has been an NBA shooting coach for past 6 years. And your first client was Malik Beasley starting 2018. He was already on the Nuggets. They'd already invested in him. To what extent did you cooperate with the team in figuring out a plan?
I was pretty independent with them. Like they were invested and they spent a first round pick, but I think they were in a place where they had a lot of guys. Wancho was a first round pick. Gary Harris was a first round pick that they had just given money to. Jamal, Will Barton was there. Monte Morris. They had a ton of guys where they were in that place of we don't know who's going to establish themselves. And they had given him a little bit of run his second year, his sophomore year, and it didn't go great. And so like when they got down to the stretch run, they played the last month of the season like it was the playoffs, and he was out of their rotation for then. So there was this line in the sand of like, hey man, if this doesn't work out, like we're probably going to cut bait. We're not going to pick up the fourth year option on him. So there wasn't a lot of initially like, hey, let's get together with the coaching staff and this, because like he's not one of those players for them. But no, I've worked with all NBA guys, and when you work with an all NBA guy, you're instantly like from the time jump happens, you're instantly collaborating of like what this looks like within their system, because Malik was a spoke on the wheel, right? If you think of Jokic as the center of the wheel, he was a spoke on one of those wheels, and he wasn't really one that they were like, this is the spoke that like he wasn't cemented in. He could have been interchangeable. When we work with an all NBA guy, they're the center of that wheel. Everything operates around you. Like there's a lot more of like, let's talk, let's be collaborative. So with Malik, it wasn't like that because he was a number in their system. And then as the year went on, like I got calls from Tim Conley, or I got calls from one of their, I had coffee with Wes Unseld Jr. when I was out there. So like as things started progressing, they're like, oh, okay, like maybe there's something here. Like let's talk a little bit more. And I ended up consulting with them the next year on Gary Harris's shot, and nothing ever came of it. But like all of a sudden I'm having coffee with like their brain trust because like I had shown I could do this thing before with one of their guys.
When you say when things started progressing, are we talking about well after the summer workouts?
Yeah. Like during the season, I spent pretty much the whole summer with him. Now he played summer league that year. So there was a stretch where I think I spent 4 or 5 weeks with them prior to them going back for summer league practice because they didn't make the playoffs. So it was a longer off season for them. Then he came back to summer league. They're like, oh, wow, there's some nice stuff there. Like the mechanics look a little different. He shot it pretty well in situations, and then spent another huge chunk with them in the back half of the summer. And then you go into training camp and there's like, oh, a few things happen. Then the ball starts rolling downhill during the year. And I remember there was this game in Memphis where they came back from like 25. And it was one of those games where, I call it a Matrix moment. When Neo stops the bullets,
Yeah.
it's this moment of awakening where you realize you can do something. And once you have that moment of awakening, like you never go back as a player. And so like this game was a big Matrix moment for him. It was at Memphis, and it was one of those where I think he had 20 something, but he closed the game, and he closed the game over Will or Gary. And so he called me after, and then like, you have these moments where you're like, oh, damn, I can do this. And it looks like this for me. And then it looks like that, like from this, I play this way. And so, guys have them all the time in the league. And when I see them happen, they're one of the coolest things because so much goes into them. And when they get on the other side of it, they see everything so differently and their perspective changes. So yeah, after the season started progressing and like he's shooting it at a high clip and the mechanics are set in and they're like, oh man, he can really shoot it. Then they run plays for him. And I think he started a stretch of like 16 games and like really, really played well. So after that, then like, his agent's talking to Tim Conley, and all of a sudden Tim Conley's texting me. And now like things are different than 8 months ago when they're like, who is this in our gym and what's going on?
You make it sound like that he was just one of a whole bunch of prospects and it was like the Squid Games. I always thought that coaches would almost like give homework over the summer. But it sounds like you're just saying, hey, we don't care if you live or die, just come back.
No, they do that. They absolutely do that. There's just,
Okay.
it's also like in the NBA, there is competition, right? You're playing against the people that are on the other side of you in different jerseys. And then you're also playing against the people that are in your jersey because you're competing for generational wealth. And if you make it over the hump, like you're there. Now, that doesn't mean that like you don't support the guys when they're playing or these guys, if they lose out a spot, like they're pissed. Like they're some of the top competitors in the world. They're the most competitive people out there. And so like they know what's at stake. So there is a certain point of like, yes, they give homework. Yes, they say, we want to see you do this. We want to see you do this. But these guys are also investing their own money to give themselves an opportunity to beat out people in front of them. Because if you're a starter, you're making 9 figures. If you're a bench player, you might be able to fall out of the rotation. And if you fall out of the rotation, like who knows, you might be playing in Europe. So there's such a wide gap of money that's at stake. And the competition is not just on the other team. It is on your team. And anybody that's ever been it, that that's the case. And like guys will talk about what they're trying to get. So yeah, it's a real thing.
Are there things that you remember learning in that first year that changed what you did with your next clients?
Yeah, absolutely. There were times where I didn't say the truth soon enough, and then I did, and holding back and thinking, man, if I say this, like, how does that affect X, Y, and Z? And then knowing that everything will be okay and understanding that it is my job. I'm supposed to hold the mirror of accountability where you care and you only want what's best, but like everything comes from that lens. Every single day was something where I just thought, man, okay, like I'm gonna take this and apply it forward to the next client. I just tried to apply all those lessons, and it sped up the learning process with each client. It sped up how I categorize stuff, how I built my hard drives, how I dispersed information. So every single day I was just trying to get better and better at it.
When you say you needed to tell the truth sooner, could you give an example of what a hard truth would be?
So I was working with a guy who was trying to make a roster, like third point guard on a roster. And there were some injuries and he got his shot, and he was going to have maybe like 4 or 5 games where he was going to be the starter. He came from a situation where he was a really good player somewhere, and the NBA was a step up for him. And the first game they played, he's a pretty good shooter, really good shooter, and teams were going under ball screens, and they were just like, all right, like, we're just going to go under as much stuff and see how long we can do this for and keep our shell compressed. And I remember talking to him after. He called me about something, then we talked the next day. I was like, I'm gonna give him a day. And then I called him and I was like, hey, look, here's the deal. Like, you've got this one shot. Like, teams are looking at you and they're saying, like, you know what, you can't beat us, and you're gonna have to pull these shots. You're gonna have to let them rip, and if they go in, they go in, and if they don't, they don't. But like, you have this opportunity and this is the one in front of you, and you've got to go let them rip, make or miss. Like, this is what it's going to be. And if you open up the shell and they go over, you can then play from there. But until you do that, they're going to keep punking you. This was like 5 years into working with the guys. I wouldn't have said that in my first year after the first game. I would have held back a little bit. I would have let like 1 or 2 plays go. And so I just became more confident in what I was seeing and to deliver that message to these guys, because it came from a place where I want what's best for them. They want what's best for them. And if you show them the film and you come from a place of we're working together, guys are incredibly receptive. They'll be like, yeah, I gotta let that rip, man. Like, why am I letting them get away with that? You just always try to do your best in terms of being the mirror of accountability of what you lay out before together is going to be the plan, and what kind of things you're going to strive to accomplish. Podziemski does a wonderful job of, he reads the game really well. He understands where passing lanes are, where he'd be moving, and his shot prep footwork is really good. So for him, I think there are times where like the feet do let them down a little bit. Your feet have to be absolute daggers, and they've got to be so sharp that nothing else matters. Like, you can get to anywhere you want. People will talk about 1-2 versus hop footwork, and I don't believe in hop footwork. I never teach it. And 1-2 isn't real. It's not 1-2. It's actually 3 steps. You need power. You need to create the power and then load the power and then the last step. So like they're talking about load and shot prep going up, but you need the first one before it. So when I see him, there are times where you'll see this nice 3-step shot prep footwork, and it'll look really clean and really smooth, and power will be loaded onto his right foot. And so first off, lefties, you load onto your right foot. Righties, you load onto your left foot. It's the power comes across your body. So he loads onto his right foot, and it's beautiful. It's nice. And then there will be times where you'll see him kind of like pull back a little bit of like, this should be a shot. And you'll see him, tap his feet. And anytime you tap your feet, think about if you're on a trampoline, right? You bounce both your feet to jump up, but you have the basketball court is not a trampoline. You don't get to drive the court down to spring up. You have to be able to load and roll through and drive up. So anytime you hit both those feet at the same time, it just puts more stress on you to drive the power from your chest, to push any little power. And when you're shooting from 25, 26 feet, anytime there's a little small deviation in how you're creating and then loading the power, it's a big math equation. That 26 feet, a small thing here ends up being a big thing when it gets to the rim. So the cleaner you can get everything at the beginning, the more you can win early with your movement, with your rhythm, your balance, your shot prep footwork, with how you load power, the better you give yourself a chance to actually make it 26 feet away.
Marc, thank you for spending the time with me. This is really great.
This was a blast. Thanks for having me, Eric.
I
hope it wasn't too nerdy.
Well, what does that even mean? How could it be too nerdy? That was perfect. I mean, you have all of this wisdom about shooting. I loved all the detail. And so I'm glad you got down into the weeds.
Semi into the weeds. We didn't get like too deep. Into the weeds would be if I pulled up like shots and started to talk through what Kuminga looks like and where he loses the power and all that other stuff. If we got deep into the weeds, I would have told you, like the way that Kuminga shoots versus the way that Steph shoots. Steph shoots like a wet towel where you snap it. Kuminga doing this, it's like that towel, it's wet, but then you put it in the freezer and you can't snap it. And so like, we didn't get like crazy into the weeds like that.
For more of Marc Campbell, he has a Substack and podcast named Low Man Help. It's great stuff. I really enjoyed reading the pieces. And he goes into detail breaking down the development plan for Malik Beasley. And he's often found as a co-host on the All NBA podcast with Tim Legler. So he's all over the place. I'll put the links in the description.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And if you didn't enjoy this video, I promise I'll do better next time.
Okay. Well, if you're going to come back, then I'm going to ask you to look at a couple other players. I don't know who they are, but now that I know that you're willing to get this deep into the shooting form, now you made the mistake. I'm going to be begging you for a lot of stuff.
No problem, man. I got you.